Welcome back, Year 12s. Mrs. George here, and I'm on chapter 7 today, Lydia. Lydia is actually describing the evolution of her relationship with Chapel. At first, it started as a platonic love, and that's what she clearly says there. I begin as his big sister. I begin as his big sister. Uh, and this particular sentence, a call comes from his mother in the kitchen. He leaves this gap at the door, so he has been watching. I lead him a chair. This is after I watch him for days out of the corner of my eye, edging his way into the reading room. So, as Chapel, as a boy, has been trying to get into the reading room. The scratching at the open door is him half in, half out. I look at the words on the page and listen. What should I do? And then a call comes from his mother in the kitchen. He leaves this gap at the door, and he's leaving. And the day, so days pass like that again. This is the day. That is a repetition. There is a repetition always. This is the day. I'm reading and waiting for him to appear. So I've been reading and waiting for him to appear. Again, the door is half closed. I'm not reading all that. I sit and read aloud. He sits across me. He sits across me. I look up, but not much. I mark the page where he had to leave and close the book. I begin to read from a different book. I just pulled off the shelf without reading the spine. Again, his mother calls. Same phrase. His mother calls. He waits and scampers out of the room. We could see that phrase is repeated here. A call from his mother. His mother's call, because that indicates that, or that foreshadows the danger. That indicates that he shouldn't be there. He should not be in the reading room anyway. Again, same repetition, that's the same phrase. This is the day I decide to teach him to read. Not because I want to, because he leaves his seat to stand beside me in order to look at the page as I read. So he was just looking at the page that Lydia has been reading. So she decided to teach him to read. And again, I take his hand, hop closer. Again, there is more light on his face and a broad smile. Point his index finger. So Lydia is trying to teach him to point his index finger to each word as she says it. And again, that same phrase. His mother calls from the kitchen and he waves on his scramble out of the room. That shows that every time he is actually, mother is actually trying to get, or Digor is trying to show that he shouldn't be there. He is in a place where he should not be there. Again, the same phrase. This is the day. He says some words aloud and with me when he recognizes them. He says them all with same accelerated voice. He is close. He is close to shouting them out. I smile and he looks away. I bury my smile for him. Again, Chapel is really excited at that moment. Again, same phrase. His mother call. His mother has to call his name twice before he hears. Again, that indicates, that foreshadows the danger, because at first he will be hearing it at least when he calls him once, but now he had to call him twice, again foreshadowing the danger. He runs so fast. Again, next phrase. This is the day he reads to me. So again, to show that, to emphasize the time and the passing of the time and the way she teaches Chapel, Digwa uses that phrase. This is the day. He reads to me not a few words, but a page after page with occasional help from me. So that actually indicates that Chapel is a very intelligent boy. Again, same phrase, repetition. This is the day I opened my eyes in the middle of his reading and realized how foolish I have been. Foolish and selfish. I have taught him to read and he cannot write his name. So at that moment, she realizes that she was such a foolish person. She didn't teach him to write. She just taught him to read. I tell him that he can read, he must learn, and now at this moment she is actually telling him that he can read and must learn how to write. So that shows her views about making the slaves to read and write. And again, he nods with vigor. But before I do anything else, I make him swear. But whatever she do before she makes him, she always makes him to swear to keep the occasion to himself. He swears readily. So that shows that there is a secrecy. This is not an allowed. This is not a common thing. Or the slaves to have that literacy is not a common thing, and that making Lydia is making him to swear. the necessary secrecy of their activity that actually serves as a reminder of the deep social inequality that divides them, because she is the master's daughter and he is a slave's son. So that secrecy actually serves as a reminder of the deep social inequality that actually divides them, and the danger for Chapel to be overstepping his rights as a slave. At that moment, we realize that. Again, he swears there is no other way unless we forget. He swears because he's prepared to do whatever is asked of him in order to learn. I feel awful for making him to do it. So now Lydia says that she feels really bad to make him to swear, um, and to make him to do that promise. There is no other way unless we forget the whole affair, which is out of the question. Otherwise, we have to forget about the whole affair, and we have to think about something, and that is out of question. And I guide his hand through each letter to the alphabet and stop at W, because your name begins with this letter, mine too, well, my surname. So again, at least making him to write his name. Then she complains loudly about always having to call. Yeah, here again, his mother calls him. Same phrase. And throughout this chapter, mother's call is actually emphasized to show that this is not an ordinary thing. This shouldn't happen. So his mother calls him. He frowns. Chapel. She says Chapel a second time without making him for answer. Then she complains loudly about always having to call his name at least twice to get a response. Again, that actually foreshadows the danger. Foreshadows the danger of a slave going into master's reading room. He does not answer until he is well clear of the reading room, by which time she calls him another couple of times. So that actually, the whole chapter actually shows that Chapel is an intelligent boy, and Lydia is actually helping him to build his identity. Lydia is helping Chapel to build his identity. And also, that kind of a learning experience gives Chapel an intellectual and spiritual freedom. Chapel is receiving an intellectual and spiritual freedom through this learning experience, or through literacy. So the importance of literacy is also shown through this chapter. Now, when you look into the next chapter, it's all about Cook. We know Cook is Whitechapel's wife. The first paragraph, she talks about her life, all my life, 2 pots and never empty. One is the master's kitchen, the other is my own. So she talks about the 2 family. I sometimes take from one to fill the other, or after the sight of the first one all day, I can hardly face the second. The 2 pots are never empty. My master's pot is full of the best things my hands will touch, but my belly won't see. Yet my pot is sweeter to me, sweet because I take from it and fill 2 plates for the people I love, my husband and my son. So Cook, we could actually see here in this paragraph that Cook places greater value on personal riches, such as her family, her husband and children, than material differences, such as receiving a higher quality meal. She doesn't care about meal, or she gives more emphasis to personal riches like the family bond and love. And in this way, she shows that family is actually capable of offsetting the unjust effects of even a deeply unequal system. Even if they are undergoing, or even if they are living through an unequal system, family is there to provide her. Now, I'm stirring my master's sport. He does not hear me. Again, emphasizing that Chapel does not hear mother. I call him a second time. Still, that foreshadows a danger. So he's not even listening to his mother's second call. That shows that the relationship has gone out of hand and that it shouldn't happen. Then I hear a voice that is my son's and not my son's. It comes from the room where the master keeps his books, a room where I have not dared to enter. It actually shows the divide between the master and slave. The door is pushed to the point of being closed. I put my ear to the crack and hear my son's voice speaking as I have never heard it before. So voice of my son's voice speaking as I have never heard it before. So what is Chapel doing? Chapel is reading. His sounds as if he is standing at a pulpit, or like the master sounds when he says prayers to the whole plantation at Christmas. So he is sounding like a master now. He sounds very confident. He's intelligent. He's developing that intellectual freedom. So Chapel is having a metaphorical transformation, or Chapel's metaphorical transformation through his voice. He is becoming a master from slave to master. That is his transformation, and that constitute a subversive reversal of role that actually indicates that a slave can also be a master. It suggests that not only Chapel is just as intellectual as or intellectual and capable as Mr. Whitechapel, but also he's potentially capable of rebelling against the status quo, that of status quo as a slave. So he sounds like a master, and Mother Cook is really happy about it. And here we could see that he sounds very confident. Sounds confident. Chapel sounds very confident, like a master, intelligent. And as I told you, through the learning or through education, he actually develops an intellectual freedom. I put my eyes to the crack and see Lydia, the darling of the house, recline in her chair. The voice of my son still sounds loud and clear. I tilt my head a fraction to the left and see that he is sitting opposite her with a book in his hands, reading, Chapel speaking, not from memory, but lifting words from a book with his eyes. My Chapel. And look how proud Cook is. Cook is really proud of Chapel. She is surprised and shocked as well. She doesn't know what to do. She is so shocked and surprised. And at the same time, she is really proud of his son. And that's the reason why she says, My Chapel. I have to cover my mouth to catch the scream that parts my lips. I back away from the door on my toes. My son's voice fades, and then I turn. So she is coming back to the kitchen. And then finally, Chapel comes near to Mother, and she says that his face is shining, his eyes are bright. What have you been up to? I ask. He says, daydreaming. And again, Chapel, okay, not far. I warn him against wandering up again. Being a slave, it's Cook's responsibility. I warn him against wandering around the house and reminding him that Mr. Santa's son was excluded because the master felt he was too much of a distraction for Lydia. We heard that same from Mr. Whitechapel, the father. Sorry, Mr. Santa Senior, the father. So Santa Senior's son, Junior, was actually excluded from Master's house because he was too much of a distraction to Lydia. And to that, Chapel says, Mr. Sanders Senior only wanted to play and talk when Lydia probably wanted to study, and therefore the master was right to exclude him. So he started talking reasonably there. Chapel started to make some sense. Again, it's her responsibility. So I remind him that his duty in this house is to assist me in the kitchen. I can't bring myself to tell him not to open a book. And so she is warning Chapel, but she says that I can't tell him not to open a book. I can't even mention the fact that I heard him with my own ears. I want to summon some disdain before. Okay, my son can open a book and sound like the master. Again, she cannot believe it. She has all the pride that she has got. I stare at the pot and smile. He wants to know what pleases me so much. All I say is I'm happy because I have everything I could want in a husband and a son. So we could see how happy Cook is when she realizes that Chapel can actually read. I watch him leave. He's just out of my sight when a worry replaces me. So when Chapel has left, she started thinking about what to say to the father. She started worrying. What shall I say to Whitechapel? What do I say to his father? And I tried to convince myself that what I saw was harmless and innocent. She know that it is really harmful. She know that it's not the right way. But now she is trying to convince that what she saw is actually harmless and innocent. But I can't deny the bold fact that Chapel was sitting in the master's quiet room reading to Miss Lydia. So she is having a conflicting mind what to do. She cannot stop her son from reading the book, and at the same time, she is a bit worried as well. She is scared as well. But again, she comes to the conclusion I'm his mother. I can't say, son, books are not for you, reading is not for you. Books will only bring trouble. Books will only increase the number of things that you have to worry about. I will not do it, nor I will get my husband to do it. Now she is making a promise that I'm not going to say to my son that books are not for you. And that actually shows that she is proud about her son, and at the same time she is fearful. But she comes to the conclusion that no, I can't say no to my son reading, and neither I will allow my husband to do it. Since Chapel has kept this grand secret from me all this time in the house, he can keep it hidden a little longer. So that is what that's what Cook thinks. Now he can keep it a little longer. Miss Lydia, well, surprise knows no boundary. I tell the port I'm sorry if I were husband. I love you. No, I know what you would do if you knew about it. Um, Husband, now she is thinking in her mind, husband, Whitechapel, I love you and tell you everything, but there is one thing I cannot tell you because I know what you would do if you knew about it. You would tell my son that he cannot read, that books and slaves do not agree. You would hold up your glorious life as an example of the slave who has done all the proper things to survive and earn respect of the master and overseer. So this is what Whitechapel is going to say to Chapel if he realizes. So Cook clearly knows about both of them. Cook clearly know how Whitechapel is going to respond. But unlike Whitechapel, who sees Chapel's happiness as a threat to the young boy's life, Cook actually understands that her son's happiness is really an important aspect of his life and that must be safeguarded and nourished. So Cook's and Whitechapel's views are different. Whitechapel is a person who is going to say all this. Books are not for you. And he even may show his own life as an example. So they have got conflicting or contrasting views. I can hear you, my husband. So, but now she is imagining how she will be talking back to her husband. I can hear you, my husband. Your voice is strong and clear, but without the strength and clarity of the voice of my son as he lives word from word after the pages of a book. What I heard must not be taken from him. So now she says, or she is planning to say to her husband that, Whitechapel, your voice is strong and clear, but my son's voice was actually more strong and clearer than yours because he could lift after word, word after word from the pages of a book. And what I heard must not be taken away from him. So she decides that she is going to keep quiet. And her decision to keep quiet actually shows that Cook support Chapel's endeavor. And Cook is actually supporting Chapel. And she wants her son to fight back and to stop the racism and the slavery. So that is really important, the conflicting views of Cook and Whitechapel. Now, next chapter is all about Lydia. Again, she starts with that same phrase, this is the day. We are reading, and my father enters room these days. Are brought to an abrupt end. Chapel, I call him, Chapel, like his mother, comes in as usual and sits. I hear the voice loud and clear without a trace of tremor. Again, she says, begun 2 years ago. What point? I'm in love. Where is that? I am in love with its. I realize that I'm in love with its cadence. So at first it was a very platonic love, but now uh, the real romance has actually started. My body is suddenly hot, so we could see how her transformation, or um, she's actually loving Chapel. I opened my eyes. Where is that? I opened my eyes to see what shape my love has taken, and there is my father, standing with his legs apart and his hands on his hips. Chapel jumps up quicker than I. The volume of Shakespeare's plays flies across the floor and flutters several of its leaves in the air. We saw the same incident um, through which chapter? Through Whitechapel's chapter. Oh, sorry, Chapel's chapter. Through his verse chapter, poem chapters. Both, but I'm more scared. So Chapel and I scramble after them. Father orders me out of the room in his stern voice reserved for reprimanding slaves. I'm so scared, I obey. but I'm about more scared for chapel. I realize I love a boy. 3 years ago, my junior. 3 years, my junior. I realize I'm in love with a slave. It's at this moment. She knew all this. Chapel is in trouble because of me. She knew that. Father has forbidden him to come to the house. Now, at this point, Father forbids Chapel to come to her house. Father tells me, if I fraternize with Chapel, I will surely bring calamity and shame tumbling through the roof of his house. So that point, or that shows that Lydia's political belief was not very popular. Lydia was ready for the interracial marriage, and her views were different. Lydia represents the views of many others as well, but we clearly know that Mr. Whitechapel is not going to be agree to it. He tells me Chapel and I must never see the light of the day together, must never read together, nor write, no sitting together in the house, nor exchange written communication, nor speak of these wicked secret meetings to anyone. So not even say this wicked. So he's a bit worried about his own status. He doesn't want anyone to think about to even he doesn't want this rumor to go out, and he will be in he doesn't want to be uh, ridiculed and mocked by others. So that's why he's asking her to keep all these secrets, wicked secret meetings, to keep it yourself. By teaching little Chapel to read and write when he can never use it, you have done him the little greatest injustice. Again, racism. That's what Father says. By teaching little Whitechapel to read and write when he can never use it, you have actually done the gravest injustice. I want to reply that a law which says a slave should not read and write is unjust. So she wanted to say that such kind of a law that a slave should not be allowed to read and write is actually unjust. But I look at my feet, but she was so scared. He said it might be possible in the future. So father says that it might be. It refers to that kind of slave literacy. Slave literacy might be possible. So it refers to slave literacy. He says that the slave literacy might be possible later in the future. Slave literacy might be possible in the later. So that actually indicates that he is not very opposed. He is not opposed to such kind of things, but um, he just wanted to be like every other plantation owners. Again, she starts with that same phrase. This is the day. Um, this is the day I'm in the reading room dreaming. When Cook comes in, my dream is always the same. So what is she dreaming about? Chapel coming and Chapel's voice. That's all she dreams. Cook said the days were getting shorter and short days were a blessing. So that's what Cook is actually helping them. Cook says that short days are coming and short days are actually a blessing. I asked how so. She said they were a gift from God because of the beautiful nights when the stars shone and winked if you looked at them. She said there was a special place to sit and look at the heavens, and now Cook is helping them. Cook is actually supporting both of them. If I go there and another person is there in the dark, she said I should not be afraid because he is there for the same specific purpose. So Cook is indicating that Chapel and Lydia should be meeting outside somewhere by looking at the starry night. This is the night. So until it was this is the day, now she transforms that phrase and she says this is the night, because they're not even they can't meet in that during that daytime. And that might be the reason why throughout her chapter she says, or de Gaulle uses the phrase, this is the day. But at this point, it changes and it starts like, this is the night. That actually shows that they are not no longer allowed to meet in daylight, which is a kind of not allowed thing. So now this is the night. I go out through the back of door after mother and father have settled in their bed. I picked my way in starlight. I get to a place close to the house behind an old wooden shed. I think I'm alone. I look up and lean on, and finally we realizes that Chapel is there. We realize that Chapel is also there. What would you wish, Chapel? I can't believe I'm in his company and I'm saying his name, Chapel. He says, if he reveals his wish to me, it will surely never be granted. How so? My father told me it spoils a wish if you tell it to the person who is part of that wish. Your father is right. And now Chapel says that my father is always right. He is more proud of his father than I am of mine. So that feeling, Lydia's feeling that Chapel is prouder of his father than she is of her father, actually suggests that a family's happiness and fulfillment has actually got nothing to do with social class. So she realizes the fact that Chapel loves his father, and that Chapel is so proud of his father. Now we agreed to meet on clear nights so that they can look at the sky, and they decided memorize something for when we next meet next time, because they're not allowed to read. And he says, I will compose something in my head. I will compose poems in my head. And he says he cannot disobey my father. He gave him his word. He refuses my offer to bring him books and paper. He asks me to be his eyes and read for him, and be his pen and write down what says to me on clear nights. So that actually indicates to us that he is such an honest guy. Chapel is such an honest guy, and he gives that respect to Mr. Whitechapel, not because of the slave and the master relationship, but it's because his dignity. He wanted to respect the dignity of Mr. Whitechapel. Or I want to say, Chapel, I want to say, all my memory is yours. So again, there is a reference to the title, and Lydia says that all my memory is yours. He stops me, and I will devour father's library for you. So Lydia is promising that she will devour, she will swallow father's library. She will completely take father's library for you. She will memorize it. And then finally, don't turn around. Yes, Chapel, they are saying goodbye. Don't turn around. Otherwise, I will have disobeyed your father. I love you, Lydia. I love you, Chapel. Again, look at his obedience and look at his honesty there. He doesn't want Lydia to look at him. We both know it cannot go on. Nevertheless, we carry on with these meetings. We spend our nights apart watching the sky for the clarity we know we will bring us together. So they know that this is not going to happen for a long time, but still they are continuing with those meetings. So their Chapels and Lydia's love actually shows that neither racism nor slavery is capable of destroying the human instinct to love and connect across boundaries. Human instinct to love and connect across boundaries of race or class. So nothing matters when there is love. And also shows that people are able to create loving and equal relationship even in the most oppressive society, even in the most unequal society, especially in a society like this. Lydia is able to create loving and equal relationship, thus engaging in private acts of rebellion that actually challenge the status quo. So they can't do much, but they are actually privately they are doing some kind of an action of rebellion that actually so that they can actually challenge the status quo. So that's all about chapters 8, 9, and 10. I'll come back with chapter 10 later. See you guys.